Welcome to First Responder Friday. My name is Conrad Weaver. I'm your host for the program, and thank you for joining us today on this Friday afternoon, I guess. It's 12 noon and a little bit after, so thanks for joining us. Maybe you're on your lunch break. Maybe you're just at home chilling out in your PJs. That's okay. Thank you for joining us. We are going to be talking with a first responder leader in just a minute. I'll introduce him, our special guest. But first, I want to tell you about who is sponsoring this program today. It is sponsored by the movie Heroin's Grip, a documentary film that I produced a few years ago. It's stories from the front lines of the heroin and opioid crisis. You can find this film on Amazon Prime. Right now, you can go to Amazon and check it out, download it, look at the trailer. It'll give you a snapshot of what's going on around the country, even today, and even worse today. You know what? I read a post today or yesterday that said heroin overdoses, opioid overdoses are up 30% during the COVID crisis. So this film is still relevant today. It was produced in 2018, but go to Amazon.com and check it out. You can also order a DVD. Go to heroinsgrip.com and order the DVD and check it out. It'll give you an insight into the opioid and heroin crisis that maybe you haven't had before. So again, my name is Conrad Weaver. We are joined today by the one and only Adam Davis. Adam, welcome to First Responder Friday.
Conrad, thank you so much for having me. And by the way, I am not the one and only. There are more Adam Davises. I have discovered that. There's a lot of them. And there are other Adam Davises who were first responders and authors. So that's why you want to learn more about me. You have to go to theadamdavis.com because that is my website. And so absolutely working hard to reach our first responders in the middle of everything they have going on. And these are challenging times. You know, we can't deny that. But I'm extremely grateful for you giving me the opportunity to come on and share with you and with your audience.
Well, it's so good to have you. So just a little bit for your audience to understand that Adam, he's an author, he's a motivational speaker, he's a former law enforcement officer, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his story today. So Adam, tell me, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, so former law enforcement officer from Southeast Alabama.
The accent doesn't, I don't get the accent at all.
Hey, listen, most people don't. You'd never know I'm from Alabama, right? But you know, former law enforcement officer and served from 2009 to 2015.
Well, thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure, and I miss it. I miss it every day. But I'm on a mission that requires a tremendous amount of my time. Since May 1st, 2018, when Behind the Bad's 365 Daily Devotions, that book launched May 1st of 2018, I have since written 5 other books, and number 6 is in progress right now, and that one's with HarperCollins.
That's just the last 2 years, basically?
Yes. And these are full-length books. These aren't like, novellas or anything. These, Bulletproof Marriage released. I had to write that one in 45 days. I started at May 1st of 2018, and it released January 1st of 2019, mass market. And then On Spiritual Combat released May of this year, 2020. And I've written a 365-day devotion co-authored with a gentleman by the name of Chad Robichaux, Mighty Oaks Foundation. It's a program for first responders and veterans, and that one that'll be released in May of 2021. And then I finished another one called Bible Promises for First Responders, co-authored with Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman. That one will release probably the fall of next year. And then I'm working on one now that can't really talk much about, but it is going to be huge. It is going to be very entertaining. But most importantly, it's going to change a lot of lives in a very positive way. And so can't really talk more about that. But, this is my mission is to change the world
so
one word at a time.
I mean, where did the subject matter, where did the motivation come from for all these books?
First of all, I believe that we have a choice in life. And one of the greatest choices we have is how we use our pain, how we use the lessons from our past. And for me, I did not want to waste it. And I had gone down a sort of a slippery slope, a dark path, a dark road, and started drinking alcohol every night and and distancing myself from people that loved and cared about me, and isolate myself and just going and do the job and consumed by the job and everything that entails.
You
Love
talking your
policing.
law enforcement job?
Yeah, and I still love it. I miss it, but that was very unhealthy. I'll tell you this. I remember specifically a time when uh, I come home from my shift and took my uniform shirt and my vest off, my duty belt, and I sat down in the recliner in the living room, and my wife asked me how my day was, and I said fine, and that was the only word I said all night. And at some point, I remember her asking me, "When did you become such a jerk?" And I had to. It sort of hit me between the eyes that my wife really didn't like me anymore. My kids really didn't like me anymore, and this is not who I wanted to be. And I was good at my job, but I was not good at home. And the things that really mattered to me were slipping out of my hands. And I had gotten to a point where, I grew up in a home where my stepdad was a pastor, he was a preacher, and I thought that I had faith figured out, which was a very arrogant position on faith, to say the least. And I realized quickly in law enforcement that I had no idea. And it wasn't really anything that I got into. It was just, seeing evil, and the effects of evil, violent, mean, hateful behavior day after day, and how that affected my outlook on life. And I got to a point that I was ready to end my life, and it was a Sunday, and I had been through several months of sort of wrestling with not really the existence of God. I never doubted his existence. I doubted his love. I doubted his goodness, and I felt like, that I'd been better off had I taken my life and not existed. And that day, in a split second, instead of taking my life, I feel like I gave it away, and that was a choice I made. And I said, God, if you want to do something with my life, I can't. Show me the way. And so since then, I've lived with what I call flashlight faith. I can't see the whole path. I can't see the whole journey. I just see what's in front of me, and I take the next step. And I needed to replace some of the bad habits with better habits. And I stopped drinking and I started writing. And the writing was therapeutic, and obviously it was a lot cheaper than a counselor at the time. And so what came about was shortly after the events of Ferguson took place, I found myself coming home and starting to write and sort of just debriefing essentially what I'd dealt with during the day. And I sat down one night and I straight up told God, I said, hey, who's going to speak life to cops? All I hear every day is how much people hate us, and they don't want us, and they want us dead. And cops are being ambushed and murdered across the country, executed. And who's going to speak life to cops? And I felt a very strong, compelling call to write a book. And I wrote and self-published a book called Spirit and Truth. And that book, while I look back in retrospect, and the message and the intent was pure, it was solid. The quality of it was less than excellent, but that was what I had at the time. That's all I could do, and that's all I knew to do. But that opened the door for a publisher to find me and give me a book deal. And
You
sort of
weren't
the rest is
necessarily
history.
you weren't necessarily a trained writer, right? You didn't go to college to write.
well, uh, I didn't get a bachelor's degree in English or literature or anything like that. I'll tell you this: I didn't start college until I was in my late 20s, and actually I was a law enforcement officer when I started, and went to school at Troy University, based out of Troy, Alabama. And my goal was to get an undergrad degree in political science. I had a minor in criminal justice, leadership development. And what happened was other people saw that I was a pretty competent writer, I would say, and they would pay me to write for them. But I really learned how to write devotionals. If you go and look at Behind the Badge and you notice anything about Behind the Badge, those entries are a lot like a patrolman's narrative. Most of them start and end the same way. If you see a patrolman's narrative, it starts, on such and such day at such and such time, I was dispatched or responded to, and then they tell the facts, and that's it. And then they end it on the same note. And so that's really where I feel like if I had to go back and look at a pivotal time where I didn't even know what I was learning, I thought I was learning how to write police reports. I was learning how to write. That's a true gift. And I think that probably some of my supervisors who had to check my reports would disagree with my gift because of all the edits they would have to make. But a writer's best friend is his editor,
You know what?
and
Yeah.
they are great assets. So
I never
that's
forget.
sort of where it started.
I never forget the first time I worked for a publishing company for a while, and I was hired. I was green behind the ears, and the first article I wrote for this online publication, he bled red all over it.
Oh yeah,
Excuse me, and I was just like, whoa. But I learned to love that because it
yeah,
made
yeah,
me a better writer. And I'm still not, I still haven't perfected the art, but those 2 years working for a publishing company really helped me,
oh man,
get to
yeah,
where I am today, just in my writing abilities.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah, I totally
yeah.
get that.
Those sergeants were instrumental, and there was a lieutenant when I was a brand new rookie that gave us a class on report writing, and one of the things she taught was the word "that" has no place in your reports, and never use the word "that" or start a sentence off with "this," and it was just little things like that that caught my attention, and I didn't realize how much I really loved writing until I needed writing. And I didn't realize what it was doing for me, and I didn't realize it was a gift. And maybe it hadn't always been a gift. Maybe it was birthed out of a place of deep pain and feeling of, down inside, feeling hopeless. Now I know I wasn't hopeless. I know that that's not the truth, and I know that I wasn't worthless. I know that I had a purpose, but I didn't feel that at the time. And if you allow those things to take control and dominate your thought process, and that's all you can focus on, then it's a chronic pain that just doesn't go away, and it really feels like I'd really be better off if I took my own life, and it's a lie. It's not the truth. And my position is based on my very strong belief in a relationship with Christ, and what His Word says, and who He says I am, and what He's done for me. And I understand not everybody believes that way, but understanding the importance of faith and in its role as a pillar in resiliency and overcoming trauma. It's a scientific fact that's actually been proven and written about, published by the U.S. Armed Forces in various studies, that faith has a pivotal role. It is a pillar in resiliency. We have to have a belief in a higher power. And for me, that higher power is the supreme creator, God Himself, Jesus, who came to save me. And I know a lot of people share in my belief, and a lot of people see it differently. So I respect the differences, but I think that at the same time, we have to see that there's an obvious pain, and that there's got to be an obvious solution to healing for trauma, because there's so many different types of trauma. For instance, at the age 5, 6 years old, I was sexually abused, sodomized by an older male who was not a relative. I always like to say that there was not a relative, just so my family doesn't look like any of them were guilty. It was not a relative, nobody that was related to me. I held on to that for nearly 20 years. And that was a lot of unforgiveness and bitterness and hate that had sort of rooted down into my heart and my soul, and that affected my decisions and my outlook on life. And there's a lot of things that happened in policing that I didn't realize when I left law enforcement how much healing I really needed. And you don't want to address it, you don't want to look at it, you don't want to deal with it, and at some point you will have to deal with it, whether you want to or not. You have to deal with it. And so these resources I've created, and the things like we've talked about off camera, were created because there's an obvious need in the sort of the field of first responders, law enforcement, fire, EMS, whatever, that there's a need for a solution to help deal with pain.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the birth of these things, was out of my own place of pain. And and it takes a lot to stand up and say that was where I was at. I wanted to end my own life.
Mm-hmm.
That I'd looked down the road and saw that it didn't seem like there was any hope. And I know that there's a lot of folks who feel that way today. You feel like that, lockdowns are never going to end, and we're never going to get back to normal, and masks are going to be the way of the future, and riots and killing and violence. And, 25 career year, that only means that you got to retire and get another job because you can't afford to live on your retirement. And a lot of times that comes with failed families, failed marriages, and a life expectancy that's probably 5 years after retirement. And that can be very depressing.
Mm.
So when we look at what the world has to offer, in its very raw state, it can be overwhelmingly depressive, and it can be oppressive in our minds and lead us down a dark path. But we have to choose to see from a different perspective. And so I hope that gives you a little insight on my background, where I'm from. I was a patrol officer. I started off on night shift. They transitioned me to day shift, became a traffic homicide investigator, trained by the FBI as a hostage negotiator, went to criminal investigations. And before I went back to patrol, I worked sex crimes, violent crimes, burglaries. I was assigned to property crimes, but I worked a little bit of everything, and I enjoy it. I enjoyed law enforcement. I to this day, like I've said, I miss that. But at the same time, I have been given an opportunity to have an impact. Just this morning, I was on the phone with officers from Oregon, and last week I was talking to NYPD. I've talked to LAPD and officers everywhere in between, Miami, literally from every corner of the nation. And I there's a lot of time and effort that goes into this, and I believe in it. I believe in the message. I believe in the results, and I know that I've been put here for such a time as this. It's not a position of arrogancy. It's complete surrender to what I believe is God's plan for me, and that He'll use the pain that we have for good if we'll allow Him. And that's a little bit of where I'm at.
What was that from the depth of your pain to where you are today? How long did it take you to get through that and to deal with that?
It seemed like it was about 112 years, but I'm not sure. It felt like it was and here's the thing. I don't think you ever get through it. I don't think that there's ever really a day when it's over. I think that there's some people, just take, for example, I've got very close friends, very, very close friends who have been involved in shootings. And those shootings have had a profound impact on them. And it has a profound impact on the way they see the world, the way they see themselves, how they go about their lives. You can't go back and undo those things. Those things never go away. So we have to learn how to manage the emotions that are associated with those memories. And for me, and how we address those things, and what do we believe? Those pains may resurface from time to time. Those bad memories may resurface from time to time. But for me, it's learning how to manage it, how we deal with it, how do we address it, and choosing to be intentional about what we dwell on, what we think on, what we meditate on, and how we go about it going forward in the future. So, I don't know that I have a good answer for that. I can't give you a start and end date. I think that I'm still going through a process of healing. Every time that I write another word, that I speak another word, that I do an interview or speak in a public arena, I think it's another step towards healing.
What do you do? Do you have like a daily habits or daily patterns that you do to keep yourself healthy and moving toward the right direction?
Yeah, so I have a group of people that have surrounded me because they realize where I've been in my life and sort of some of the places I walked through mentally and emotionally and spiritually. So I have a team of people who I believe God has intentionally placed around me that are very close to me. They know a lot about my daily routine and what I'm doing, and they challenge me. I'll tell you this, if you've never heard of Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman, his talks are on resiliency and the mind, the bulletproof mind are so profound. And we've written 3 books together. And just last week, we were having a conversation, and he flat out asked me, he said, "How are you sleeping?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I sleep all right, I guess." And so we talked about the habits and those things. So just having people in your life that say, "Hey, take a day during the week and totally unplug. Don't respond to messages. Don't take calls. Just totally unplug digitally. Go spend time with your family. Go outside. Do something. Just get away or sleep, whatever. But just take those time." And then you got somebody that says, "Hey, I want you to start taking these different approaches to sleeping and be intentional about these steps so that you can have better sleep, because we know the effects of lack of sleep and sleep disorders, the effects that have on you psychologically, physiologically, and and the consequences of not getting enough sleep. And so I think one of the greatest things is having, number one, time during the day. I love to start and end my day studying God's word. I love to spend that time in prayer and throughout the day, meditating on the word and in a place of sort of quiet prayer. And then having good relationships with people who I think are only as good as the people around you. And having those people surrounding me in my life, and having a fantastic wife who is supportive and understanding, who's compassionate, and who supports everything I'm doing. Those are very important. But having those times during the day where you know that you can't be so rigid in your schedule and what you're doing, that you don't allow for time to step away and sort of decompress, because there's times I get some pretty heavy phone calls from other officers who need help. And so I need time to step away from that, regroup so I can get back in the game and focus, and understanding the rhythm. There's a rhythm that we go through in our day, and in our lives is a rhythm. And Marcus Luttrell has told me numerous times. He said, you gotta learn your battle rhythm, And when you discover your battle rhythm, you'll understand the rhythm of rest, and understanding that there's times that your body says, I need to take a break, and your mind says, I need to take a break. And even in writing, there's a necessary call to rest your mind. Even though for me, writing is more of a form of worship to God now, it's my offering to Him when I write. But there's still a time where you have to rest your mind, you rest your body, allow your whole being to come to a place of rest. And that's so important, and it's often neglected in our world today. And we get out of rhythm, and I think that's when we see some of the negative effects that come through life. So that's probably more of a complex way to answer a simple question, but those are some of the things I've done. I try to wake up around the same time every day. Sometimes it doesn't work, because if I'm up super late writing or working on a project, then I may not get up at the same time. But getting up at the same time, going to walk and spending that time studying the Bible or doing devotion, praying, and then I have time for creative ideas where I just dump everything out, so that when I do go to bed, my mind's not going 100,000 miles an hour. So it tends to happen that every time I lay down in the bed, all the good ideas come to me, but whatever. So work through that.
Do you take time, in my schedule, and this is something it's a work in progress, is to really be able to turn off the emails, to turn off all the input, so that I can output.
Oh yeah. Oh my
So
goodness.
it's frustrating sometimes, because I'm a connector. I like to be connected to people, like connecting people, and so turning email off sometimes is difficult for me. But I think it's so important for us, for anyone, and to disconnect from the input so that we can have more effective output.
Oh yeah.
Would you agree with that?
No, absolutely. Listen, and I go back to this, when I'm writing, I don't like to listen to music that has any words being
Mm-hmm.
sang,
Mm-hmm.
um, or if there are words, it needs to be something that I've already heard 1,000 times, because otherwise I start to focus on that. So it's I would say it's impossible to effectively pour out while you constantly have things going in.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that when we're connected on a relational level, as I have been horribly guilty of in the past, don't pick your phone up while you're trying to communicate with another human being. The people that are in front of you are very important, and those moments are very important. Those will soon become memories.
Mm-hmm.
Don't take a phone to bed with you. Don't spend that time connected digitally, so much so that you're causing a deficiency in your relationships that you have around you. So it's I would say it's almost impossible to be effective in pouring out into the people that you've been given a responsibility with, whether it's doing your job, or being within your family or your friends or church or whatever the case. You need to unplug, and if that means leaving your phone in a car or turning it off, and that's important. but more so for your personal well-being, to take time during the day to totally just unplug. Maybe set time during the day, and this is hard for me, set time during the day to where, okay, at 10, 2, and 4, 10, 2, 4, and 6, I'm going to respond to emails. That way you're not sitting there responding to emails all throughout the day and it disrupting your flow throughout the day, sort of the rhythm of your day. And finding that balance. And that's hard it's hard to do for a lot of people because that's just not the dynamics of their life and where they're at. They have to respond immediately or whatever the case. So understanding those boundaries and the dynamics of finding that time to disconnect and unplug, and so that you can rest and effectively pour out and do what you're supposed to do.
So when you're writing your books and you have what, 5 of them, how do you figure out what your focus is? How do you figure out, okay, who your target audience is, and talk a little bit about each one and who they're for and what they do?
So Behind the Badge, which is Behind the Badge 365 Daily Devotions for Law Enforcement, that's for law enforcement officers. I wrote the book for law enforcement officers, period. But the majority of the time, they're not the ones who buy the book. They'll read it. They'll read it if you buy it and give it to them. There's guys who have never stepped foot inside of a church building that read the book every single day. And it's being read by officers in every state across the country. I wrote it for cops, but my strategy for getting it into their hands is connecting with business owners, with retailers, with pastors, with ministry leaders, chaplains, individuals who are just huge supporters, organizations, and they buy them by the case, by 5 cases, 10 cases, whatever the case, and give them away. And that's the way I'm getting them put out. Bulletproof Marriage was written. Now, let me go back Behind the Badge real quick. It's not an in-depth expository teaching. We're not going to dive deep into the various, the Hebrew, the original Hebrew, original Greek. It is intended for the reading by a law enforcement officer who is having a busy day. They don't have a lot of extra time, and I understand that. And so it's intended to be read in less than about 2 minutes. You can read that in about 2 minutes, and you're gonna be encouraged. You're gonna be challenged. You're gonna have something to think about. You're gonna want to go and research the scripture in the Bible for yourself. But it's intended for cops. They're
So it
busy.
looks like each page has kind of is for
Yeah.
one day. So
Yeah,
it's just
you got a story, you got a principle, you have a prayer and a scripture, and that's the premise for every day. And then Bulletproof Marriage was written for first responders and military couples. Now, I've had some great people tell me that this would be applicable for any marriage, but I wrote this, and if you read some of the language within it, you'll understand that it's written for a lot of strong personalities, and there's some unique dynamics within the first responder military world and those relationships that have to be addressed. And if you read through some of the content there, you'll see that. But that was written specifically for those audiences. I know that about 55% of law enforcement officers are married. There's some myths about the divorce rate among cops. And so we try to address that and how we overcome those things. But we also know that according to various studies, somewhere between 42 and 70% of suicides are tied to a failed relationship. So we want to address those things as well. And this is very intentionally put out, created. Most of your police academies, most of your basic trainings are about 3 months long. But seldom do they say, this is how you can have a healthy marriage. We know that police officers, those who are married, are committed, but a lot of them are not healthy marriages. So we want to have healthy marriages so that we can have healthy spouses, healthy officers, and healthy communities. And so this is just one more tool for that. And then On Spiritual Combat was recently released. It was written based on a book called On Combat by Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. That book has sold over 500,000 copies, and this one just released in May. And it was written based on the premise of the psychology and physiology of deadly force encounters of combat and time and peace. And so of times of war and peace. And this one is really on some essentials of equipping yourself with the armor of God, as you read about in the book of Ephesians, and how to pray, how to study the Bible, and what to do to take action. You hear a lot of people say, "Well, I'm gonna pray about that," but I think that we've been called to action. And yes, prayer is action, but we have to put something behind that sometimes. If all I did was sit around and pray for people to read my book, but never called to try to put it in the hands of folks, uh, I don't know that God would honor that. He honors our obedience.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes in the prayers, we get so caught up in asking and praying for stuff that we forget to be still and listen. And so those are some of the reasons why I write. The reasons why I write are to create or spark a hunger for the things of God, for the Bible, to study, to find out who Jesus was, to see what God's word says about the different situations in our lives, to see how he addresses trauma and pain, or various injustices that he hates injustice, but he loves us and he cares about us, and that he's called us to do something. I see it like this: like if I was still active in policing and there was a disaster, they would send me to a certain part of our county or city. That in the same way that God has dispatched us to this planet to be ambassadors for his kingdom, to do work here on this planet that is run by evil, that is run by the kingdom of darkness, we're here to be the salt and light for the kingdom of God. And we're here to love him and to love others as ourselves. And when we do that, when we do it with those focuses, to honor him in all we do, then we can have a profound impact on the world around us. Maybe it's just one life of somebody that's close to us, but we can have a profound impact. And so doing those things, that's sort of some of the reasons why I've done it. And knowing that there is great research that has been produced at the highest academic levels that shows that there's a tremendous reliance upon faith in overcoming trauma. Mm-hmm. And when we do that, then we understand that some of these devotions will lead you to a place to where maybe you don't have this great moment of healing in an instant, but it will lead you to a road to where you say, okay, I need to get help. I need to get this looked at. I need to talk to somebody about this. Or, in a marriage component where you say, okay, we need help with this. We can't overcome this on our own. And then so we've created these resources to be a bridge for conversations that create healing. And in those moments, miracles happen because we were willing to address the pain.
Mm-hmm.
And
what would you say to that person who's like, well, I'm not really a spiritual person. Don't believe in God and all that business. So what would you say to someone like that?
I think that there's a lot that we can learn if we're willing to meet in the middle. And for me, I don't come at it from a position of being religious because I'm a very analytical person. My mind is created as a very analytical person, so I look at things a little different, I think. And so when you look at it from a perspective of, well, I don't like or I don't think, I think it's very closed-minded. I'm willing to sit down and listen to your perspective. And if you'll take a minute and a half a day just to listen to some of the stories through some of these books, Bulletproof Marriage or Behind the Badge or on Spiritual Combat, you're going to see that there's a different view. And so I would be willing to sit down and have a discussion and understand why you came to that place. What caused you to come to that place, to that sort of that the place where you don't believe in God. And there's a lot of people. I have a lot of friends who to this day say, I don't believe in God, or I'm not a spiritual person, but we're all spiritual because we're not just flesh and bone. We have a soul, and that soul is what lives eternally. And so it's we have to be willing to meet in the middle. And I meet you in the middle is I'll listen to you and I'll respect you if you'll listen to me and respect me. And that's what's lacking in our country today is nobody's willing to meet in the middle. It's so polarized on various ends. And that's why we see so much violence and so much hate. And if we're willing to meet in the middle, that's not either of us compromising our belief system. It's just saying I understand what you're saying because I was once in a very similar position. I was very hard-hearted, very cynical. I would be willing to say that there's some degree of a negative experience or some degree of trauma that's occurred in the past, that a moment of healing. So for me, my position is to help you experience the love of God in a very real way, because His love is real. It's more real than me or you talking to each other in this very moment. And it's more powerful than anything we could describe in this world. And so experiencing that love for yourself does everything for the doubter. I just had a friend come over yesterday that was talking to my wife and I, and they were talking about how they used to be atheists and how they started their study of different religions. And then they got to the point to where they said, I've never given Jesus a shot. And through their own study and research, come to see Him as the Son of God. And so, yeah, there's people who have different beliefs. I get that. But I think a lot of times that we have individuals who have hard hearts, and I speak because I was one of those. I knew God existed. That was my belief. I never doubted that He existed, but I doubted that He was good, and I doubted that He loved, because I saw the evil around me, and I had felt pain myself. I said, why, if you love me, wouldn't you send somebody to stop what happened to me as a little boy? Why wouldn't you stop the pain that happened to the little babies around us, or the innocent, or the helpless? Why, you got more angels than we could fathom. Why not just intervene? And so I had to understand that we were called to be the ones who intervene, and that sometimes horrible things happen. That Jesus said that in this world we would have trouble, but be of good cheer, take heart, He's overcome the world. And that if He's overcome the world and He lives in us and He's given us the power over the evil in this world, then we are called to action. So what are you going to do with the pain that you've got? You can choose to dwell on it, you can choose to embrace it, or you can let God use it. And if you let Him use it, He can use it to change a world, and He can change a world in a second. And so it's a matter of understanding that we can look at things from an intellectual standpoint. And for a long time, that's the only way I saw God, was intellectually. But I didn't give Him my heart. I didn't give Him my life. And when we get to a point to where we're exhausted from trying to interrogate God, like I did for probably several years, I was essentially internally interrogating God. Who are you? And if you're good, then prove it. If you love, then prove it, show it. You're going to have to show me, because all the facts in front of me right now don't add up to that. And then I had to understand we live in a fallen world. This is a world that's incredibly evil, but there's a lot of people that can do a lot of good if we walk in the fullness of who He's called us to be. John 10:10 says the enemy seeks to kill, steal, and destroy. He is here to take everything you've got. He's not going to just stop with you. He wants your family. He wants your kids. He wants your friends. But we have to be the ones to say, Jesus also said that I come that you might have life to the fullest. And that life to the fullest is a life with Him, living and demonstrating His love, because I may be the only example of the love of God that some person may ever see. And if they can read it in a book or see it in a talk, then I'll give them the best I've got. And I'm a living testament to His love. That's what I've become. I'm a living testament of what He's done for me. He'll do for anybody. If you'll just take a peek, I'm not asking you to dive right in head first. Just take a peek and see what He'll do for you.
Over the last few weeks, we've had different people on, and we've talked about, physical, being physically fit to help the
Yeah.
mental side of things. So why is it important to be spiritually fit? How does that fit in with the physical side, the mental and emotional side?
Yeah. If what good is it? If I think it was Paul, forgive me, I can't remember right offhand. I think it was Paul that said, what good is it if you train your physical body all the time, but your soul is in horrible condition, your spirit is in horrible condition. You've got all these burdens that you try to carry. I think that's our problem. We try to carry the burdens on our own, in our own power, in our own strength. but we were never created to do that. The trauma comes because no human being was ever created or intended to see some of the things that we
Mm-hmm.
see. Most of the things we see, even in films, even movies, we were never created to see some of the horrible violence that we
Mm-hmm.
see. And so when we understand that these things have an impact on us at the deepest level of who we are, then we understand that if we're sick down here, then we're going to be sick in our body and in our mind.
Mm-hmm.
But if we can address it from the deepest point of our being, of who we are, then we can get to the root of some of these deep issues. And if we can get to the root of these issues, then we can see healthier individuals who are well in every aspect. I remember um, sort of my last year in law enforcement, I had this goal to become more intelligent through reading, through studying the Bible, through going to college. And I did. I graduated, first person in my family graduated college at the age of, I forget the age, but it was in 2016. Started work on a master's degree and got halfway through that before I got a 3-book publishing deal, and I had to put the master's degree on hold. And then I wanted to become healthier. So I've tried to make some small changes over time to where I lose weight, or I become stronger, or I just walk 3 miles a day, or do something to keep my body healthy. And then my mind, and understanding the things that I think on, and the process of thinking, choosing to monitor my thoughts and see the thoughts that I have and entertain, and be more conscious about what I'm entertaining in my mind, and then have a practice of gratitude for what we do have. Even being grateful for some of the challenges that we're going through in life, the process, and gratitude is a gift. It is a profound gift. When you realize that there's so much that you have to be thankful for, and gratitude is I look at it sort of as a PhD of thankfulness. It's a whole different level, where you're truly grateful for what you've got around you, what you've been going through, because it could happen to you or it can happen for you. I think that all the things that happen in my life happen for me for a reason, and that's how I choose to look at it. So it's a matter of perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we choose to have a healthier perspective, it takes us down a different path, a healthier path, when we have a healthy perspective. And when we choose, our minds are very powerful. They're extremely powerful. But if our spirits are sick, if our spiritual man is neglected, then really, what good is it to have a strong body? What good is it? I'll take my chances with believing in God, and Jesus, who came to give everything for me. I'll take my chances because He did so much for me. I'll tell you, the day that I was going to take my life, He was the only one who showed up. And I owe a great deal of gratitude. I owe my life, as I said, and I think it was Paul, I'm a bondservant of love. I am enslaved by love to show others what He's done for me, because I know for a fact it's touched others who were in the same place. And so it's imperative. If it's like if you build a house and you put a foundation of styrofoam down, and then you build this beautiful house on a foundation of styrofoam, you're probably not going to get past a few studs before the styrofoam crumbles.
Mm-hmm.
So is if we train our physical bodies and become as intellectual as humanly possible, but neglect our spirits, then we're still empty.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have no purpose, and we have no meaning, we have no depth, and we have no direction. Mm-hmm. And we're connected and totally rely upon ourselves, and that is an extremely disconcerting position, to think that I rely on myself, and an intellectual perspective of believing that I can do all things in my own power, or that I can forgive my own sins, or that I can walk in my own power. I can accomplish all these things in my own effort. Mm-hmm. Understanding that I have surrendered to a power that literally spoke and creation became. He is the ultimate creator. He is the supreme being, God Himself. He sent His only Son for me. And my obligation is to share the love that He's given me. Meet you halfway in the middle, and we'll talk about it, because He's given everything for me.
So I'm going to put a little perspective out there, just to think about this, and little devil's advocate. So I'm a police officer. I work a 12-hour swing shift. I have a couple of kids. I have a wife at home. My kids playing little league. I
Hmm.
got all these pressures. I got to work out. I don't have time, man. I'm tired all the time because I'm working swing shift. Man, what do I do?
Yeah. Yeah. I laugh because I was there. For the time that I was in law enforcement, my wife, for the most time, homeschooled our kids. She works harder than I've ever worked in my life, but she doesn't have a paid job. She doesn't go punch a clock somewhere. So my work meant that I would work my shift and work off duty, work over, whatever it took, so that my kids could have a comfortable life. They could have the education that my wife was teaching them, and be able to do all the things that they wanted to do, and also have a house and utilities and just the basic necessities. But that meant I worked a lot. And I remember on Sundays that I was off, I didn't want to go anywhere. Matter of fact, we were having this conversation just 2 or 3 nights ago. My wife was telling somebody how hard I was to reach, and connect to, because I was zoned out. I was out. I had, I talked to a few pastors about what I was going through and the emotions I had and the thoughts I had. And I would drop some very, very vulgar language on them, explaining and describing where I was at, and they couldn't connect to it. So I think it's a matter of perspective and priority. Um, you know, I put everything I had into my career in law enforcement. I wanted to retire. That was I wanted to give 25, 30 years to that and do as much as possible. But I realized pretty soon that I was doing it at the sake of destroying my family and my marriage. And, nobody's going to tell you what to believe. You choose what you believe. But just figure out what you believe and stand up for it. Figure out what you believe and stand up for it. If you believe in your marriage, fight for your marriage. If you believe in your faith, fight for your faith. If you believe in your career, fight for your career. But don't tell me you don't have time, because I know that there's a lot of folks who have time, but we're wasting time in different areas. If you spend 30 minutes contemplating and worrying about a problem or complaining to somebody about a problem, you could have taken that 30 minutes and addressed it from a different perspective. A lot of people that come to me have come to me and said, I have this problem, this problem, this problem, this problem, this problem. And I give them solutions to the problems, but they continue to list more problems. It's a matter of your attitude, your mindset, your perspective of what you're going to do. And you know what? Quite frankly, if you are investing 24 hours of your day in a career and family and all these things, and you have zero time, then maybe it's time to take a look at what you're doing, and take 2 minutes a day, take 5 minutes a day, and start refreshing yourself. Because at some point, if that's all you're doing is pouring out, then you're going to get to a point to where you call burnt out. And eventually you're going to be a very negative person, very cynical, very hard-hearted, and it's not healthy. You're not going to last. You're not going to be able to do the job. You're going to make a mistake, and it could be a bad mistake, or you're not going to be a good spouse or a good parent, much less a good first responder. So take the time to invest in yourself. And if you don't believe in God, then still take time to invest in yourself. Take time to meditate. Think about the good things that you have. Even if there's a thing that I have. It's called the 5 minute journal. Nothing faith based about it. If you're just vehemently opposed to anything related to God, this is a great resource. You take literally 5 minutes a day. You sit down and list what you're grateful for, some of the things that you want to accomplish, what would make this day great, and then at the end of the day, you revisit it. So you take a few minutes in the morning, a few minutes at night, and it sort of puts a new perspective on things. A mindset. It's mindset. I understand being cynical. I understand being hard-hearted. I understand seeing the world as a bunch of evil people who hate your guts and nobody wants anything to do with you. But remember that there are certain relationships that are necessary to fight for. And if you're married, if you're a parent, if you have friends that care about you, you have coworkers that care about you, You have to be willing to take care of yourself so that you can continue to pour into those relationships because they care about you.
Mhm.
And it's an attitude, it's a perspective, it's a mindset. And I would say that if someone's in that perspective, in that position, that they probably need to sit down and have a conversation with somebody face to face about maybe looking at priorities and shifting some things around, maybe getting them some help, looking at how they can get more rest, how they can take care of themselves so that they're healthy and well, so that they continue to do the job well, and not burn themselves out, and be a good spouse at home and be a good parent if that's the case. But overall, be a healthier you. And from my perspective, that means having time alone, studying God's word and praying, and also leading your family in the same way.
An empty water picture, a pitcher can't continue filling water glasses.
No, it cannot.
So
No,
you
it
got to
can't.
be able to take that time to fill it back up, right? And I think
Absolutely.
that's in our lives too. I know that for me is I have to take time. I've got
Yeah.
a lot going on. I got extended family things going on. I got I'm going to be a grandparent here in a couple months, and that's going to take time.
Well, congratulations.
Oh, thank you. And so I know that I have to take time for me
Yeah.
to fill this water pitcher if I want to expect to fill someone else's glass.
Absolutely. And I think that's the important thing. And I'm not telling you how to believe. I'm telling you what I believe and what I stand for, and who saved me, who redeemed me, and how I spend my day. And I'm able to get a lot accomplished. I'm able to get a lot done. I don't think that without that relationship with God, and without having a heart surrender to Him and addressing the physical, the intellectual, the spiritual aspects of my existence, that I could have written 5 books in 2 years. I'm not that smart. I'm just not. I attribute it to a relationship with God and a gift that He's given me. So use what He's given you, and have some priorities, have a routine, get that battle rhythm set up so that you can be more effective in the things that you're going to face, because we know trouble will come. It's either here, it's gone, or it's coming.
Mhm.
We got to be prepared for it so that we can be victorious when it shows up.
All right. So you convinced me to get your book. Where can I get your book?
And go to theadamdavis.com, or it's on Amazon, any retailer, wherever books are sold. theadamdavis.com. I'm also a spokesperson for Reboot Recovery First Responders. You can go to rebootrecovery.com, I believe, and you can see all the stuff listed there. But my website will have most everything you need. I'm on social media. Happy to connect with you. If you have questions, reach out. I'd love to talk to you.
Well, Adam, it's been great talking to you today, and thank you for doing what you do for our members
Absolutely.
of our law enforcement community and our first responder community. Tell me a little bit about what's been the response from people that have read your books and have engaged with you and on that level.
Oh, my goodness. I just recently had a couple, both husband and wife are law enforcement officers. I got probably 6 or 7 videos that they were going on and on about Bulletproof Marriage, and said it breathed fresh life. The majority of people who give me feedback on Bulletproof Marriage says it has restored communications between the spouse that had been cut off. That is huge. I've heard probably a dozen or so that had set appointments for a divorce lawyer. Somebody challenged to go through Bulletproof Marriage, save their marriage. It's huge. But I think that if all it does is improve communication, then that's huge. That's magnificent, because I did a survey before the book was written that asked what were some of the key challenges in your relationship, in your marriage. 84% said communication problems. So if the majority are saying it's helping resolve communications issues or restoring communication lines, I think it's a huge success. Behind the badge is reaching law enforcement officers. Some of them have never stepped foot into a church, and they're reading it every day. So if you think about books like the Daily Stoic or different meditation avenues, then what I have prepared is from the best-selling book of all time. I've incorporated scripture. There's 365 different scriptures. There's 365 unique prayers. And these are just starting points for you You read the stories, they're going to be applicable. You read the lessons, they're going to be applicable. The prayers are meaningful, they're applicable. The scripture is something for you to meditate on during the day. I've had a lot of guys who said it's refreshing. A lot of them say it helps restore focus before they start their day or after they end their day. And quite frankly, the most powerful ones are the ones who said that they had gotten so tied up and lost their sense of identity, that their identity was tied solely in their career and what they did. And they were ready to take their life. I can't tell you how many guys who've reached out to me and said that. And to be quite honest, I don't understand how that would work, but I'm thankful it did. But it's changed lives, it's encouraged guys. It's challenged them. There's been a lot of them who've read it and established a relationship with God and deepened their faith. And for some, it's just challenging, but it's not a deep teaching. It's intended to sort of spark that hunger. And then on spiritual combat, I've got a lot of folks who love that. It's a lot deeper of a teaching, but it's going to definitely equip you for the things that are going on around you. It's going to make you think about some things. I'd encourage you to check that one out. It's only been out since May, and we're just now starting to get some really good feedback in on that one.
Well, the books are Behind the Badge, Bulletproof Marriage, and On Spiritual Combat, plus some other resources are all found on Adam's his website and on Amazon. And we'll be sure to put the links in the show notes, and so you can access those directly from what you're watching today. Adam, thank you so much for joining us today on First Responder Friday. Thank you also for what you're doing in the first responder communities. And if someone wants to reach out to you personally, how do they do that?
Yeah. Email me, info@theadamdavis.com. If you're a chaplain, a pastor, business owner, and you want to get a case of Bulletproof Marriage or Behind the Badge for law enforcement officers or first responders in your community, email me, info@theadamdavis.com, or text 334-618-8295. You text or email, and I'll respond. I may not respond immediately, but I'll respond to you as quick as possible and give you the help I can, or plug you into somebody who can help you. But I'd be happy to partner with you to get these resources to first responders in your area.
Awesome. Adam Davis, thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate your comments. And
Absolutely.
For you who are watching today, thank you for joining us and being a part of this recorded program. But we are so grateful to be able to bring people like Adam to you for this show and for future shows. Be sure to check back with us what the schedule is upcoming in the next few weeks and the guests that we'll have on our First Responder Friday show. So my name is Conrad Weaver, and I have been your host for First Responder Friday. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time.